أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we will continue with the second mystery of the second branch of 24th word. So this is 24th word, second branch, second mystery. Well, we can start reading from the second paragraph of the second mystery.
Because in reality, the most true and perfect and complete perfection is thus. Yes, the wisdom in these mysteries is this. For sure, man is the place of manifestation of all the names. But since his power is slight, his will partial, his abilities various, and desires different, he searches for reality among thousands of veils and barriers. So in uncovering reality and witnessing the truth, barriers intervene. Some people cannot bypass the barriers. Their abilities are all different. The abilities of some cannot support the unfolding of some of the truths of belief. Moreover, the colors of the names' manifestations vary according to the place they are manifested. They become all different. Some people who manifest them cannot be the means to the complete manifestation of a name. Also, the manifestation of the names takes on different forms in respect of universality, particularity, shadow, or originality. Some capacities cannot transcend particularity, and some cannot emerge from the shadow. In some capacities, sometimes one name is predominant, and it carries out its word and duels in that capacity. Now we shall make a few indications to this profound mystery and this extensive wisdom with an enigmatical, comprehensive, true, but somewhat complex comparison. For example, let us suppose an adorned flower, a living droplet enamored of the moon, and a translucent atom which looks to the sun. Each of these possess consciousness and some perfection, and each has a yearning for that perfection. Together with indicating many truths, these three things also allude to the spiritual voyaging of the soul, the mind, and the heart. They also correspond to three levels of those who investigate reality. The first indicates those who follow the path of intellectual thought, those who follow the path of sainthood, and those who follow the path of prophethood. The second corresponds to those who approach reality by striving for perfection through the bodily systems, and those who approach it by striving with the mind and refining the soul, and those who approach it through belief, submission, and purifying the heart. The third is the comparison of those who do not give up egotism, are plunged in works, and approach reality through deduction and reasoning only, and of those who search for reality through knowledge and science, reason and learning, and those who approach reality swiftly through belief and the Quran, poverty and worship. These comparisons point to the wisdom and the differences between the three groups, whose capacities are also different. Thus, under the titles of flower, droplet, and atom, we shall now, by means of a comparison, the mystery and extensive wisdom and the progress of the three groups.
So we can stop there. That was a beautiful. You must be taking some classes of reading. Okay, Jazakallah khair. So any comments, any questions, parts that you don't agree or parts that you don't understand regarding the second paragraph, the part which, because in reality the most true and complete perfection is thus and so on. If there are some parts that you want to highlight, people here or joining us online, please go ahead. Let me wait a few seconds. Please go ahead.
So these three things correspond to those who investigate reality, right? And they do so in different ways.
Yes.
Does that mean through the different ways, they each have a different view that they, through their perfection, through the perfection of their means, right, the different ways, is it that they don't all reach the same level of reality, the same truth of reality, that they...
I guess it would be clarified your question in the later parts, but this is kind of what I understand as well.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just a little bit reluctant to say yes or no, because as we're going to see, it will be like more complicated than this.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, I guess there's no harm to say, yes, this is also what I understand.
Okay, sure.
But even before that, with the paragraph, before that, do we have any questions, comments? Okay, let's continue with the with the example then. For example, let us suppose an adorned flower, a living droplet enamored of the moon, and translucent, translucent atom which looks to the sun. So I highly recommend, if you can, take some paper and pen, write down all these, the details, like examples, the names. Otherwise, it will be kind of complicated.
You easily get lost.
Yes. So I remember when we were studying this part with some friends, we even charted some tables, saying that, okay, this is flower, these are the properties, features, and so on and so forth. So I'm giving you a few seconds so that you can, get your papers and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that we will give you, or I will give you something you will write down. Rather, I recommend everyone to sketch her or his own ideas and share us so that we can get a better understanding together, inshallah. Yusuf went to grab some papers for us. Okay, let me read. For example, let us suppose an adorned flower, living droplet, enamored of the moon, and translucent atom, which looks to the sun. So we have three items, or let's say three paths, okay? One is a flower, the second is a droplet, the third is an atom, and which looks to sun. Each of these possesses consciousness and some perfection. So all three has a kind of consciousness, and what I understand from this, they all somehow connected to reality around them, surrounding them. So they are connected to the reality, they are experiencing the reality, and through this experience, they come up with some understanding. And he says some perfection. Again, I see this as whatever they have, whether consciousness or their capacities, capabilities, they are designed to take them to perfection. So they are made, they are created to be perfected. So this is what I understand, at least. And each has a yearning for that perfection. So they don't have just some capacity or potential to be perfect, to reach perfection. They also have this desire to reach the perfection. And from my reading, how I understand, is they are not left alone. So this is what I understand. When the author says they have has a yearning for that perfection, I understand it as they are not left alone. They are given what they need. Say desire, they are given a desire to reach perfection. They are not left in a darkness they have this capacity or potential to read something, but they are not even aware of that. This is not the case. Somebody is taking care of them, giving them this desire, guiding them. Together with indicating many truths, these three things also allude to the spiritual voyaging of the soul. So again, I'm sharing my quick understanding, so please take them with a grain of salt. These paths, these different kinds that we will study, flower, droplet, atom, they will refer to some paths, different paths of soul, the spiritual voyaging of the soul that we all can visit. Like I can visit path 1, I can visit path 2, I can visit path 3. And from that, I don't understand, for instance, that these 3 corresponds to different kinds of people or different groups of people, different clans of people, whatever. But different attitudes, maybe different mindsets or different, I guess the path for me is the best choice. Different paths that we all can follow, take. The mind and the heart. Oh, spiritual voyaging of the soul, the mind, and the heart. So I guess it is possible to read it as one is referred to soul, other one is mind, other one the heart. But I'm reluctant to make such conclusions right now. Okay? But from what I read so far, reads as if the flower is corresponding to soul, nafs, and droplet corresponding or referring to maybe mind, akıl, and atom referring to maybe heart. But of course, please do not take them as anatomical entities. Definitely, we don't have a droplet as a mind. So anyway, and then they also correspond to 3 levels of those who investigate reality. So if you are investigating reality, then these 3 paths are possible paths that you might be taken. So there's a footnote, so he will say first, second, third. Without footnote, it reads as if the first refers to flower, second refers to atom, third refers to, the second to the droplet and the third to the atom, but he warns against that. He says, these are also 3 groups in each level. The 3 things given as examples, flowers, droplet, atom, in the comparison, look to these 3 groups which are in each level. Indeed, they look to those 9 groups, not 3 levels. So each 3 level, first, second, third, will include 3 different things. And within each level, these 3 different things will refer to flower, droplet, and atom. Okay? So here comes the need for writing down, at least for me. So, okay, flower, droplet, atom. So let's see. First, he says the first way to separate them. First way to study their differences. First indicates those who follow the path of intellectual thought. Okay, so flower corresponds to path of intellectual thought. Okay, so flower, first feature of flower, path of intellectual thought. And Of course, if you are not happy with my style right now, because it's kind of like slightly different than our usual style, that I'm writing down some things and I'm also encouraging you, please let me know. We can skip back to our, let's say, regular style. We don't have to follow this. Intellectual thought, and then he says, those who follow the path of sainthood. So this refers to droplet. So under droplet, I'm saying the path of sainthood. And those who follow the path of prophethood. So this is the Adam. Path of prophethood. So far we said, okay, flowers corresponds to path of intellectual thought, droplet corresponds to path of sainthood, atom corresponds to path of prophethood. Let's continue. Second, corresponds to those who approach reality by striving for perfection through the bodily systems. Okay, so flower is perfection through bodily systems. Of course, bodily systems, it's like a strange translation, maybe. Definitely is not referring to like what is blood circulation, what is the name of the system?
Respiratory.
Circulatory. Respiratory is the
Like one and the same, right?
Yes. It's not referring to these, as far as I understand, these biological systems per se, but rather the Turkish version is much, I guess, like clearer in that sense. It says cismani cihazat, meaning like whatever you have in this physical world, okay, whatever you have as a material thing, maybe, okay. So perfection through these material things that you have. And those who approach it by striving with the mind. So droplet, perfection through striving with mind. So I wrote down this under droplet.
Can I ask you?
Oh.
How should we differentiate between striving with the mind and following the path of intellectual thought?
So that's a great question. It will be even more complicated with the third, because at least to me, this is an issue of translation. At many places, it seems like the flower and droplet is mixing. Let's finish and then we can share our own personal ideas about quality of the translation and what we understand with a better translation, hopefully. And let's continue. And those who approach it through belief, submission, and purifying heart. So under the Adam, I say perfection through oh, just a second, please. There's a technical issue. Okay. Okay, under the Adam, I say perfection through belief, submission. Let's continue with the third. Third is the comparison of those who do not give up egotism, are plunged in works, and approach reality through deduction and reasoning only. So this deduction and reasoning, again, my personal choice. I think the worst ever translation, in the original it says istidlal, right? Yes, istidlal trying to find the truth, true istidlal, which is like a delil. Whatever you have in front of you. Sorry? Evidence. Evidence in like at least the way I understand, like if we combine it with this, the second, where he says for flower perfection through bodily systems or material things. So I take this as trying to reach reality just using whatever in front of your eyes, what you have in front of you. What you have in you, for instance, what you have in others, what you see out there. This is what I personally, I might be wrong, but this is what I understand from istidlal. So, but I guess the first two things is more informative. It says, we do not give up egotism and plunged in words. So trying to reach through what he or she has, this is what I understand from egotism, and what he sees around him, like works, what is being created, what he sees, what he feels, and so on. So under flower, I'm writing egotism and works. You, of course, make your own choice. And then, and of those who search for reality through knowledge and science, reason and learning. So under droplet, I say knowledge, science, reasoning, and those who approach reality swiftly through belief and the Quran, poverty and worship. So under atom, I say Quran, poverty, worship. These comparisons point to the wisdom in the differences between the three groups whose capacities are also different. So when I look at my chart, I'm sure you have your own, hopefully different charts. So we have three paths, the flower, droplet, atom. It will be clearer why he chooses these examples, why flower, why droplet, why atom, in the later parts. But let's have our chart in hand before starting reading the following parts. So under flower, I have path of intellectual thought, perfection through bodily systems, egotisms, and works. So if you have anything other than these or maybe better options, please go ahead and interrupt. I'm waiting for any comments right now. Okay, under droplet, I have path of sainthood, perfection through striving with mind, science, reasoning. And under atom, I have path of prophethood, perfection through belief, submission, Quran, poverty, worship. I also recommend, if you have access to, reading, what is the English translation? Mesnevi Nuriye?
Seedbed of the light.
Okay, Seedbed of the Light. There are three chapters with these three names. When you read these chapters, it becomes, at least to me, it became much clearer what he means with this flowers, path of perfection through body systems, egotism, works, or four droplet, path of sainthood, perfection through striving with mind, science, reasoning, and path of prophethood, perfection through belief, submission, and so on. In the first chapter, flower, he and like in both, all three, he somehow reaches the truth of Tawheed, or truth of creator, sustainer, Rabbinate. But in the first chapter, when he talks about the flower, he mostly talks about his desires, his fears, his how he feels, what he sees around, like people dying. He will also die. He realized this. He goes through. He follows the path of his own desires, his own feelings, what he has, what he sees around. Of course, these are my interpretations. With the chapter named Droplet, he gives many, he provides many reasoning about, like, kind of proofs of God, if you can say, or the ways to understand some features or properties of the names and so on. All the things that you can arrive through reasoning, to using your mind and so on. And the third one in the atom is dedicated to Prophet Muhammad. It's, I guess, very similar to, what is it, 18th word? Or where we study Prophet Muhammad? 19 or 18. It's partly overlapping with this. So after reading these chapters, at least to me, it became a little bit clearer. So I highly recommend you to read as well. So I stop here. I talked a lot. And let's start discussing the parts that we read so far. Any questions, comments, ideas? I shared my own understanding, so I hope some of you disagree with me, so that we can find a better understanding together, inshallah.
For me, I can see the difference between flower and atom. Like one seems to be approaching with the message, like the path of prophethood, and the other one is looking at the life for itself. So there is no meaning, there is no prophethood message. But it's hard for me to differentiate flower from droplet, or like where does droplet fit? Like, because it seems very similar to prophethood for me too, like sainthood. So droplet seems very similar to Adam. So what do you think is like the difference between those two? Like, where does droplet fit in between the other two?
I also just want to add, I don't know if it's the author's intention or not, but I feel like certain things are being set opposed to each other as if they're mutually exclusive, and it makes me wonder why this must be as it is, for lack of a better word, and categorized as such. Like, if can intellectual thought, just citing one example, why does that have to be a different path than that of prophethood? It seems like these things are not inherently opposed to each other, but they seem to be being set apart and with different other ones as well. So I'm just wondering, how is this categorization to help me?
What is the point of this categorization?
Sure, I mean, like one of them, it seems like, oh, this one doesn't give up egoism. Okay, I don't want that one. I'll go with the other one. Do I just pick and choose? Okay, I like the second level of this one, but not like, it feels like I'm ordering a pizza. And is this more descriptive or prescriptive? That's a question I have too. Is this saying that inevitably I will find myself in one of these, or do I have a certain say in it? Anyways, just to think about all together, online and in person, inshallah.
Any other thoughts, ideas?
Just a lot of questions came. We had a lot of questions and you came in. It was
as an answer. Any attempts to these questions. The first question was from Abdurrahman. Like the difference between flower and the droplet for him is a fuzzy difference.
Yeah, they're very similar.
And the second question was from Aisha Nur with glasses.
Different personas.
Different persona, more aggressive.
Just when you thought I couldn't do this.
What is the point of all these? Is he describing or prescribing?
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
So, building upon, I guess, what the two before me have said, like adorned flower, the first path is that it follows the path, this person follows the path of intellectual thought. But in the other two, I don't know, sections, it talks a lot about physical things and focusing on material things. That seems like separate, right, from intellectual thought. You might think that would use the mind. And then in the living droplet section, right, for the second and third categories, it's perfection through utilization of the mind. I would assume that is some sort of intellectual action, right? And it would correspond better with that in the first category for the adorned flower. And also, search for reality through knowledge, science, reasoning, and learning. I would assume all of those are intellectual thought. Do we know what the word that is being translated as intellectual thought is?
That's a great question. I was thinking the same thing. The word used in first, he says ehli fikir, ehli fikir, ehli velayet, sorry. Ehli fikir, ehli velayet, and for the prophethood, ehli nübüvvet, sorry. Didn't help?
You can translate that into English.
Okay. So, with the first, the way I understand, translation, this is this is what translation can go so far, anyway, but the way I understand is, so he's talking about different, maybe personalities, not specifically people, but maybe personalities. And from Ehli Fikir, what I understand is like anyone who can think, anyone who can, see it and try to understand something. Sometimes, like what I do is, I just think about something. I just try to come up with an understanding. The second one, Ehli Velayet, here the translation is path of sainthood. I guess the difference is, when you say path of sainthood, you somehow realize that you are in the process of submission, that you realize that what you come up with as a conclusion or as a solution or as an idea, whatever, it's not the whole picture. You are not alone to reach the reality. You are not left alone to reach the reality. Right? You are not just a philosopher, or you're not a person trying to come up with the answers, which refers to the first one, maybe. But in the second one, there's also this flavor of, there's something that will guide me. There must be a message. There must be, something that would be a bigger picture, maybe. So what I come up with is just a piece of it, maybe wrong, whatever. And with the third one, those who follow the path of prophethood, now I guess it's at most level of submission, meaning that whatever I have is given to me. Even these ideas, even these conclusions, and they are given to me for some reason, for training of myself, right? So you do not say that, okay, I have a problem in front of me and I will think and solve it. But instead you say, okay, whatever I have in front of me as a problem, it's there for my training, and the answer will come to me to solve it, or the truth will given to me. So at least this is how I understand now. But again, I might be wrong.
Can it be that since he's talking about first 3 layers, and for the first layer he says intellect, sainthood, prophethood. So these are very broad categories. So as if the second layer, third layer, it is getting more and more fine-tuned. So the ideas are getting, what he is saying is, I mean, briefly I can say that, yeah, I am a person of, I don't know, intellect, or I can say that, well, I'm a person of following prophet, very broadly. But I guess as we get it more fine-tuned, because it looks like, because he said those people are having this journey. First of all, I might not having this journey at all. This might be the case. Still, I would say that I am a believer, I attend my mosque and everything, but I might be content with it. This is possible. But if I say that, okay, let me take the extra mile, I entered to this journey, initially there might be 3 roads in front of me, which is those that are apparently using their intellect too much. Others which are more, whatever that sainthood means, the way I would take it is, they're not that much using intellect, or exclusively relying on intellect, but something more spiritual. And there are a lot of such books nowadays you will see, like to public people, there are a lot of available books, purification of heart sort of books, but they are for laymen. I mean, they are, you are not really digging very deep, but still you are not staying at where you are. This is another journey. And there's a third one, which is like people of prophethood. So these are very broad categories initially. This is how I take it. But if you would like to take another extra mile into it, I guess, then it's getting more and more fine-tuned. Then in the second layer, for the first category, now he starts saying those that are trying to go with whatever bodily systems, again, an issue with the translation. But so something is getting more fine-tuned because there are multiple options now available in front of you. So I guess these fine-tunings are happening in there. And it looks like eventually, since it's very interesting to me, for the first group of people, at the third layer, he says, those who do not give up egotism, plunged into works of art, and exclusively try to go through proofs or inductive, deductive reasoning. So he's saying that if you fine-tune this too much, this is likely to take you to, still, though he doesn't say that these are not people of the journey, still he says they are in the journey of finding the truth. But as you get fine-tuned in it, you will start to rely more on yourself and you do not give up your egotism. And this is what is likely to, in the fine-tuned versions of it, this is what will be visible. This is how I'm taking it.
And going back to the other question, why these are listed here? Why he's talking about these categories, these groups?
So my understanding is, because initially we asked the question, why is there this different colors of truth? Although if truth is one, why is it like in this metaphor, if sun is one, but there are different reflections of sun? So I guess he's now talking about several different layers, and within each layer there are different groups of people which are working on it.
And also in the second mystery, we're talking about why there are differences in messages of prophets. Not in the core message, but the parts that are emphasized. Why there are such differences, why there are different rulings. If all trying to take us to the same creator, why they try to take us from different ways. These were the questions, and as an example, as an explanation, author was saying that because there are many differences among people, and we are all trying to uncovering reality, witnessing the truth under barriers, veils. We have to go through them. And also manifestation of the names takes on different forms in respect of universality, particularity, shadow of originality. So manifestation of names takes different forms. Now he's trying to explain how manifestation of names, for instance, takes different forms. And these are, as far as I understand, different examples of how manifestation of sun can take different forms. In one example, sun's light are reflected through the colors of flower. In another example, sun's lights reflect on the moon, and droplet observes lights through moon. And the third example, sun's light pass through translucent atom directly. So he's talking about different ways of manifestation of names. In our example, different ways of manifestation of sun through us. Sometimes I see sun when I look at my skin. I say, oh, my skin is pinkish. So this is a manifestation of sun, right? We all know without sunlight, there's no color. So I observe sun through my skin color. I observe sun through, metaphorically speaking, how I feel, what I desire, how I understand. So these are all manifestation of creator in me. Sometimes I observe, as in this example, I observe the lights of sun through moon. In the night time, I look at moon, how illuminated it is, and I say that, oh, there must be a sun giving me light, giving me guidance. Just like, when I look at creation around me, when I say, oh, this creation is pointing something other than themselves, there must be a meaning behind all this. The tree is pointing something other than itself. When I say this, I observe the light of sun through moon, tree, and through moon, I go beyond and reach sun. That's sometimes what I do. And sometimes, when we realize that we don't have anything, when we are we have absolute poverty. When we have, he says only poverty, right? Yes. We have weakness and nothing more. We say, what I observe is nothing but lights of sun, nothing but creation, nothing but my creator. So I give away everything. I follow the path of prophethood. This is what I understand, path of prophethood. Poverty, weakness. And the way I understand, he's describing these different ways that I, a single person, can reach to the same conclusion, maybe at different levels. So I don't take them as, oh, he's saying that, okay, choose one of them, either one or two, whether you are Turkish or Pakistani. But rather he's, I guess, saying that these are the different ways, different modes, paths that we all take. But at least we should be aware of their differences so that we can utilize them properly. Or we can maybe take them as levels, steps that we should or we do take. And take the flower as the first step, because we start our lives as looking at ourselves and say that, okay, I like this, I want this, like just like a baby. I need milk, give me milk. And through this relationship, I learn something. But sometimes we go beyond. We see that, oh, whatever I see there is pointing something else. And then finally, we reach the conclusion, if we do, that everything belongs to him. So we can also, I guess, take them as steps or stops we take, we visit in our journey of spiritual perfection.
Just one small comment. The last sentence was saying, one of the last sentences anyways, these comparisons point to the wisdom in the differences between the three groups, whose capacities are also different. So just to take the very broad categories of intellect, sainthood, and prophethood, for example, I feel like wherever I locate myself, I constrain myself with the tools of this school of thought or school of movement, if you like. So I constrain myself within there. So it is becoming my capacity. And I guess the author in here is saying that as long as you stay in here, that much you can know your creator. So as Ayşenur was saying, so which one shall I choose? Definitely we choose them for certain reasons, but the outcome of our choosing is we are constraining ourselves. So I guess this part is something important for me, if I'm happy with being constrained. Because it looks like I feel that, well, I'm a free thinker or I'm a free person, I might just pick and choose things from here and there. But like practically speaking, let's say I started taking the secular education from childhood. Now it is being so hard for me to think from outside the boundaries of materialism. So I get used to it so much so that anything else is becoming very, very hard for me to even start using it. So I guess this sort of a choice that was made at some point is, if you stick to these restrictions, that much you can go. But if you say that, okay, this restriction, do I have to stick with them? So once I step back and say that, okay, what does prophethood offer me? What does sainthood offer me? Whatever, then things are changing.
There was a reaction, part of the reaction I observed there, when you say this constraints, we constrain ourselves.
I wasn't sure what he meant.
Okay.
Clarified after.
I just don't want to miss anything.
Don't worry, even if you do, I'll take it home.
So our online participants are very silent today. HB. Before it was HB plus NB, and there was a driving in parentheses. Now it's only HB. So I hope it's not, what I afraid. Nothing happened to you, NB. You got dumped in the highway, I guess. And she's not driving anymore. So any comments from our online participants? Okay, silence. Should we continue reading? Any other questions, comments? Because like I shared so far what I understand. Many of us did the same. Let's dive into fun. Okay. We can, two options. We can read this first, second, third again, try to understand every word or sentence further, or we can continue reading. I'm fine with both. If nobody suggests otherwise, I will continue reading, just for sake of covering more so that we can understand more. Okay, let's read then from Das. This is a very complicated text. I'm not sure where to stop. Let's start reading and we can say, okay, that's enough.
Stop once you get lost.
Okay. Any volunteer other than Abdurrahman? Anyone wants to save Abdurrahman from the misery?
He already cleared his throat.
He's getting ready.
He's getting ready.
I knew the second I clear my throat, you'd say that.
If he didn't say anything about your throat clearing, I would say something about your scarf, or so I would find something.
Inshallah, I will read that.
Okay, let's start from thus under the titles of flower.
Thus, under the titles of flower, droplet, and atom, we shall show by means of a comparison the mystery and extensive wisdom in the progress of the three groups. For example, through its creator's permission and at his command, the sun has three sorts of manifestation: reflection and radiance. One is its reflection on flowers, one its reflection on the moon and the planets, and one its reflection on shiny objects like glass and water. The first is in three ways. One is a universal and general manifestation and reflection whereby its radiance encompasses all flowers at once. Another is a special manifestation whereby it has a special reflection for each species. Another is a particular manifestation whereby its effulgence is in accordance with the individuality of each flower. This comparison of ours is in conformity with the statement that the adorned colors of flowers arises from the changing reflections of the seven colors in the sun's light. According to this, flowers too are sorts of mirrors to the sun. The second is the light and effulgence which, with the all-wise Creator's permission, the sun gives to the moon and planets. Having received this extensive universal light and effulgence, the moon, whose light is like a shadow of that light, profits from the sun in a universal fashion. Then its radiance and effulgence shines in a particular way on the seas and air and shining earth, and partially on the bubbles on the sea and translucent particles of the earth and the molecules of the air. The third is, through the divine command, a reflection of the sun which, making the air and the surface of the seas into mirrors, is pure, universal, and without shadow. Then the sun gives to each of the bubbles on the sea, the droplets of water, molecules of air, and snowflakes, a particular reflection and tiny image of itself. Thus, in the three forms mentioned above, the sun bestows an effulgence and favor on every flower, the moon, and all droplets and atoms. And these in turn are each in two ways. The first way is direct and without barrier or veil. This way represents the way of prophethood. The second way, in this, barriers intervene. The capacities of the mirrors and places of manifestation add color to the sun's manifestations. This way represents the way of sainthood. Thus, on the first way, flower, droplet, and atom can each say, I am a mirror to the sun of all the world. But on the second way, they cannot say that. They can rather say, I am the mirror to my own sun, or the mirror to the sun which is manifested in my species. For that is the manner in which they know the sun. They cannot see a sun which looks to the whole world. The sun of that individual or species or genus appears to it within narrow confines and under limiting restrictions. And they cannot ascribe to that restricted sun the works of the unrestricted, unconfined, absolute sun. For within those narrow restrictions and limited confines, he cannot attribute to the sun with a certain witnessing of the heart its majestic works, like furnishing the whole face of the earth with light and heat, steering all plants and animals into life, and making the planets revolve around it. Indeed, even if those three things, which we suppose to have consciousness, ascribe those wondrous works to the sun, which they see under those restrictions, they can only do so with the mind and through belief, and through submitting to the fact that that restricted thing is absolute. Whereas these judgments of flower, droplet, and atom, which we suppose to possess reason like a human being, that is, they're ascribing those mighty works to the sun, is through the mind and reason. It is not through illumination. Indeed, sometimes their judgments concerning belief clash with their illuminations about the cosmos. They can only believe them with great difficulty. Now the three of us must...
We can, I guess, stop here.
I'm thoroughly lost.
Yeah.
So, paper and pen time again. Let's start reading from the beginning. Thus, under the titles of flower, droplet, and atom, we shall show by means of a comparison the mystery and extensive wisdom in the progress of three groups. For example, through its creator's permission and at his command, the sun has three sources of manifestation. So, suns has three sources of manifestation. I guess that's the key part.
Is it three sorts of manifestation, or three sorts of manifestation, three sorts of reflection, and three sorts of radiance?
I guess he's like using them as synonyms, or maybe.
So it's just three sorts in general.
Yes.
Rather than three sorts
Yes.
of three different.
So this is how I understand. Yes. Sun has three sorts of manifestations or reflection or radiance. One is its reflection on flowers. So the one kind of reflection is its reflection on flowers. So when studying this reflection, he will further explain what he means with a petal flower. Okay? Second, on flowers. One, its reflection on the moon. So we have flowers, second moon, and the third, and planet, and one, its reflection on shining objects like glass and water. Glass and water. Okay, so three types of reflection: flowers, moon, glass, and water. So he dives into the first one, the sun's reflection on flowers. The first is in three ways. So reflection on flowers also has three ways. One is a universal and general manifestation and reflection whereby its radiance encompasses all flowers at once. So one is universal on all flowers. Second, another is a special manifestation whereby it has a special reflection for each species. Each species. Another is a particular manifestation whereby its effulgence is in accordance with the individuality of each flower. So each flower. So sun's manifestation or reflection on flowers can be universal at the same time on all flowers, can be particular to species, or can be particular to each flower. Okay? So he's talking about levels of universality, particularity. So this is all for flowers.
Can we say that, let's say the flower over there is specifically, so this is a type of orchid, I don't know its name. So generally there are certain patterns and colors that you can see through this orchid type. And there are ones which you never see in this particular type of orchid. But across the whole springtime, you see all different colors of sun, that whatever is out there possible, through all different flowers. So I guess this is the general. In terms of particular to species, is across all orchids, there are certain colors that you can see.
Certain patterns,
Certain patterns.
shapes.
But when it comes to this specific orchid, you see that it's pinkish, while the other one is more greenish. So they have individual, like the two orchids over there, individually they have certain particular reflections or manifestations.
Or if you take it as yours as a human being, when I look at all fellow humans, I see certain things. And through these general things, I can know my creator as a universal, for instance, food provider, let's say. Because he provides, he sustains food everyone on this world, in this world. I also know that he provides certain things to my nation, let's say.
Chinese cuisine?
Chinese cuisine, for instance, yes. And also I know him through specific things that I like, that I enjoy, which are given to me.
I mean, a lot of people die through malnutrition.
Yes, they do.
So is food a good example for the general encompassing?
I think so, because they all have desire for food.
Oh.
They all
So you're
have
saying
need for
their
food.
need for food is the universal aspect of it.
It could be, yes.
Or you can say that every people die. Certain groups of people have a different way of dying in terms of their age, whatever. So humanity lives within a range of 0 to 120 years. But when it comes to Turks, let's say it is 0 to 80. But when it comes to my family, so it's getting narrower and narrower. Every human being has a unique time of death as well, or way of dying as well. So whatever is the manifestation, I guess, in this example, rather than adding malnutrition death into an example of sustenance, I would say you can analyze it in the context of giving of death, which is another manifestation. And still, it has several colors.
And even with the malnutrition, like the fact that they were given birth, that means they provided some food at some point, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't exist, let's say. But anyway, like this is just an example. So second, now we are talking about the manifestation of sun, radiance of suns on moon. Second is the light and effulgence, which with the all-wise Creator's permission, the sun gives to the moon and planets. Having received this extensive universal light and effulgence, the moon, whose light is like a shadow of that light, profits from the sun in a universal fashion. Then its radiance and effulgence shines in a particular way on the seas and air and shining earth, and partially on the bubbles on the sea and translucent particles of the earth and the molecules of the air. With the example of flowers, he was explaining level of universality, particularity, and so on. Now, with the moon example, he's explaining, at least the way I understand, he's explaining the difference between originality and shadow that he was referring in the second paragraph. He was saying, let me read that. Also, the manifestation of the names takes on different forms in respect of universality, particularity, shadow of, or originality. Now he says, just like moon, the light of sun sometimes directly reach the moon, right? But from moon, as a shadow, it reaches to everything else, including flowers, droplets, atom, and so on. So it says, as far as I understand, if you try to understand sun through moon, you should know that what you see there, what you receive from moon, is just a shadow of the original sun.
Because the moon is just a bedrock.
Because moon is just a barrier or a veil to sun, rather than dead rock. It's a beautiful object.
Dead rocks can be nice.
I show with glasses. Okay, the third one. The second one is the reflection. I feel like, I'm in a class with my pen, paper. I'm really sorry. Like, I really don't intend this.
I think it's good,
But because it's so complicated,
Yeah.
It's like, at least for myself, I feel obliged to do that. But please don't take it as, I'm like a teacher trying to explain something. Like, I'm doing it for myself.
I think you need to hold the online people accountable and see if they're taking.
Okay.
You're gonna open a submissions box and they can send you their notes.
So, okay, the second we said with the moon, he's talking about originality, shadow. And third, he says, through the divine command, the reflection of the sun, which making the air and the surface of the seas into mirrors, is pure, universal, and without shadow. Then the sun gives to each of the bubbles on the sea the droplets of water, molecules of air, and snowflakes a particular reflection and tiny image of itself. So we're still talking about the universal and particular here. But this time, unlike flower, this is like a direct manifestation of sun. So the difference between universal and particular, I guess, when we look at sea surface, we will see that the sun as a whole is manifested on sea surface. But at the same time, if you look at the tiny bubbles of the sea, like when there's a waves in sea, in each bubble, you can also see the entire sun reflected, that as a tiny image. So there's one universal reflection of sun on the entire surface. And within each bubble, there's a particular manifestation of sun.
And I am trying to learn about sun, either as a flower, or either as someone who looks at the moon,
Yes.
or as someone like a droplet, which has the image of sun right on it.
So yes, as someone who's trying to understand sun in this example, if we, of course, extend it to our case, try to understand the creator, or trying to reach the truth, let's say, we can do it as flower. We can look at, our colors used metaphorically, of course. And then colors of others, what they have in their life. I can do it as flower. I can do it by looking at the moon and trying to reach beyond moon. I guess that's the part in seedbed, what was it?
Seedbed of the light.
Seedbed of the light, when he's talking about droplet in chapter, he talks about ismi, say, manai ismi, manai hafi, what all objects refers to. What is the meaning beyond everything we see, kind of these things, like trying to reach the original source from the shadow. Anyway, and with the third one, glass and water, is talking about this direct manifestation of sunlight. Again, either universally or particularly.
Goodness. Good.
So you were saying, I felt like you were and maybe this was me misunderstanding, but I felt like you were drawing out the analogy that like, which was helpful for me, the notion that with the flower, it's kind of like looking at myself, if you will, right? And then with the moon, it's more like looking at other people, seeing them as potential shadows of a light. How can I bring the directness of a bubble or glass into, like, what does it mean to directly experience? Because it seems like within my realm of reality, there's always some sort of mediation or shadow or something through which I say, okay, this is indicating towards, rather than being direct. Or is it just making the connection directly and not pausing at certain points? Maybe that's the way to understand it.
Let's keep this in mind, this question, how we should understand directness. Thus, in the three forms mentioned above, the sun bestows an effulgence and favor on every flower, the moon, and all droplets and atoms, and these in turn are each in two ways. First way is direct and without barrier on veil. This way represents the way of prophethood. The second way, in these barriers intervene capacities of the mirrors and places of the manifestation, add colors to the sun's manifestations. This way represents the way of sainthood. Any comments here?
Is it, when it says these in turn are each in two ways, is it that the sun's bestowal of effulgence and favor on the flower is in two ways, and on the moon is in two ways, and on all droplets is in two ways?
I guess so.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. So then why does it, but then that would mean that within the sun's bestowal of effulgence and favor on the flower, since that's two ways, and these are two of the two ways, and that is also the path, the way of prophethood and sainthood.
Say it again, sorry.
So you have the flower, right? You have the sun. You have the sun, right? And then flower, moon, droplet. And it's saying that this is in two ways, this is in two ways, and this is in two ways.
Oh, so just for clarification,
yeah.
We have, like, for reflection, we have flower, moon, and atom.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Droplet. And also when he says in two ways, it's not talking about the moon, but droplet.
Oh, it's okay. So that was my question.
Here it says on every flower, the moon, all droplets and atoms. But in original, it says on every flower and through moon, all droplets and then atoms. So going back to original three, flowers, droplet, atom. He says for all these three, there can be direct and indirect manifestations.
Okay. So the two ways is for each of them.
Yes.
Okay.
So for instance, you can get the sunlight directly as a flower. You can get the sunlight through moon as a flower.
But then you getting the sun directly as a flower is also a way of prophethood.
Yes.
Okay. So it is then two ways for each, in a sense. Okay. All right. No, thank you.
So I have a question about, like, the receiving the sunlight and the manifestation of the sunlight, right? So this seems to be talking about receiving sunlight, whereas previously it was it the manifestation of sunlight, right? A flower specifically, or all flowers manifest color, and that is the manifestation of sunlight because they live off the light or something. And then each specific type of flower manifests different characteristics. So that this as a manifestation, the sunlight as well. And then each specific flower has an individual flower has its own manifestation. But here it's talking about receiving sunlight, and that might be different.
So I guess there might even be a further intermediary between you and sunlight, other than you being a flower. Because if I get to know the sun through being a flower, I just tend to know him through my colors.
Right.
He's going to say it, but it's not like flower raises its head and looks at the sun. The flower looks at itself and tries to get some idea about what sun looks like. It just looks at itself. It doesn't raise its head. It might even be the case that this flower uses another intermediary as the reflection of sun. Think of it like this. The sun comes to a mirror reflects the sun to the flower. So second order derivative of the sunlight comes to the flower. So even further intermediaries intervene between you and the sun. So what does this mean? Because since he says it is, this is the path of prophethood versus sainthood. So what does it mean that I put even further barriers between me and the Creator? I guess we will get to understand what that means.
We are losing online participants, so probably it's better to switch to some stories of religious heroes instead of the people who are still with us, they are so silent. It also shows our ratings are pretty low. So how we should continue? How should we continue? Any comments, any ideas?
I guess still, since we didn't enter to the story yet,
Yes,
we are
yes,
just
yes.
descriptive. So I guess let's not get lost in here, because if we stop here, next week we will need to reread this part.
Exactly, yes. So there's a hand. Mohammed Said, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to tell that on my side the silence is because I really I'm not sure what is going to be the result of this section. But so far I'm benefiting the way it goes, the way we are studying. Thank you very much for all the effort.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. That was relieving, gave us a relief. So let's continue then. Okay, I will summarize my notes so far. So we talked about different paths, which are named as flower, path of droplet, who looks at moon, and path of atom, which is translucent, reflects whatever, not reflects, but whatever comes to it, it goes through it. And we said, okay, to better understand these paths, we should look at an example of sun. If sun represents the truth, the reality that we want to reach, if sun represents our sustainer, our creator, we have different types of relationship with our sustainer. And he said, okay, we can count 3 types. One, its manifestation is its reflection on or through flowers, which can be universal on all flowers, which can be particular to certain species, which can be particular to a specific flower. And he said also, sometimes sun reflects through a mirror, like moon. So you don't observe the sun directly, but you only observe its shadow. And then he said, and sometimes sun is reflected through or towards whatever, through glass and water or other shining objects, transparent objects, let's say. In this case as well, we can see a universal manifestation of sun on all shiny objects together, like a sea surface. A big, huge sun is reflected there. Or we can also see a particular reflection of sun in each water molecule or water droplet. So these different kinds of manifestation of sun, as far as I understand, will give us a better understanding of different paths that we take to reach our sustainer, to reach the sun in this example. This is the summary of my notes. If you want to add anything, please go ahead. Otherwise, we can continue reading. Okay, let's continue from now. The three of us must enter into this comparison. So we have Atik, read it, Abdurrahman. I guess it's time for HP. Okay, great. HP raised her hand. HP, would you like to read starting with now the three of us enter into this comparison after you share your comments, of course.
Oh no, I raised my hand so I could read, so that I could participate and speak, so that your rating wouldn't be so low. So inshallah, then I can start reading.
Alhamdulillah, that's great. Please go ahead.
Okay, feel free to stop me wherever. Now the three of us must enter into this comparison, which is narrow for reality, but in some of the corners of which the members of reality are to be seen, and which is mixed with reality. The three of us shall suppose ourselves to be flower, droplet, and atom. For consciousness, which we suppose them to have insufficient, we must add our reasons to theirs. That is to say, just as they receive effulgence from their physical sun, we too shall receive effulgence from our immaterial sun, and must understand it. And so, my friend who has not forgotten the world is preoccupied with materiality, and whose soul is dense. You must be flower. You be flower, I'm sorry. Flower takes on a color dissolved from the sun's light, and it mixes the sun's image in with that color and clothes itself in an adorned form. For your capacity resembles it as well. Then let this philosopher who had studied secular science and is plunged in causes like the old Said be droplet, which is enamored of the moon. For the moon affords him the shadow of light, it has received from the sun, and it gives a light to the pupil of his eye. Oh snap, I clicked on another link. Hold on one moment. Okay. Droplet too shines with the light, but he can only see the moon with it. He cannot see the sun. Rather, he can only see it through belief. Then let this poor man be Adam, who knows everything to be directly from Almighty God and considers causes to be a veil. He is such an Adam that knows himself to be poor in his own self. He has nothing on which to depend so as to rely on himself like flower. He possesses no color that he should appear through it, and he does not recognize other things that he should turn towards them. He has a sheer purity by which he holds the sun's image directly in the pupil of his eye. Now, since we have taken the place of these three things, we must consider ourselves. What do we have? What must we do? Thus, we look and see that through his favors the most magnificent one is adorning illuminating and nurturing us. And man worships one who bestows favors on him. He wants to be close to one worthy of being worshipped and desires to see him. In which case, in accordance with our capacities, each of us journeys through the attraction of that love. You who is like flower, you are going, but go as a flower. See, you have gone. You have advanced and advanced till you have reached the universal degree, as though you have become like all flowers. But flower is a dense mirror. It dissolves and refracts the 7 colors in light. It conceals the sun's reflection. You will not be successful in seeing the face of the sun which you love, for the colors and characteristics which are restricted and disperse it, draw a veil over it and obscure it. In this situation, you cannot be saved from the separation which occurs with the interposing of barriers. However, you can be saved on one condition, which is that you raise your head, which is sunk in love of your own soul, and withdraw your gaze, which glories and takes pleasure in its own merits, and cast it at the face of the sun and the sky. But on condition you turn your face looking down to the earth to gain your livelihood. But on condition you turn your face looking down to the earth to gain your livelihood up to the sun. For you are its mirror. Your duty is to act as a mirror to it. Whether you know it or not, your sustenance will anyway come from the earth, the door to the treasury of mercy. Yes, a flower is like a minuscule mirror of the sun, and the sun too is merely a drop-like flash manifesting in the seas of the skies the name of the light of the pre-eternal sun. Would you like me to keep going, or should I take a pause here?
One more paragraph, if you can read the small.
Okay, sure. O heart of man, understand from this of what sort of a sun you are the mirror. After fulfilling this condition, you will find your perfection. But just as in actual reality you cannot see the sun in that way, so you cannot understand this truth naked. The colors of your attributes give it a color, and your cloudy telescope imposes a form on it, and your limited capacity restricts it.
Jazakallah khair. The next will be the droplet, so we can stop here, I guess. Try to understand the flower. I guess we have 15 minutes.
Still looking at why did he talk about these 2 ways before entering to here? The first is a direct without barrier or veil, and the second is through the barriers. And it looks like in this, when he was talking about flower, he talked about both ways. Flower first tried to get to know his creator through himself as the mirror. So he looked at himself or itself and said that, oh, I have yellow color being reflected on me, therefore the sun should have yellow. And to the end of the paragraph, he was saying that raise your hand and look at the sun directly. Why are you just looking at the reflections of sun? Why are you taking yourself as the mirror? And although it is possible for you to directly look at sun, whatever that means, and get to know sun directly, you are getting lost by looking at or taking yourself as the mirror. Therefore, you can only say my sun, because you are seeing the sun that is reflected on your petals or the flower. So I guess this is why, although in the first type of personality here, he says this, who has not forgotten the world is preoccupied with materiality and whose soul is dense. For this person, still the 2 ways are open, like the path of prophethood is open, the path of sainthood is open. But the question is how I am taking it. Do I, again, I guess we will the same pattern will repeat with the rest of the text again. But personally, how do I do in my life? Do I try to, and what does it mean, to directly look at the sun versus use some sort of a mirror to look at the sun? And this mirror, I guess in this case would be, is my intellect a mirror? Is my heart a mirror through which I look at, or my appetite, is it another mirror? I look at how sun or how the eternal source is manifesting on my appetite, on my sustenance, and therefore I know him as such. Or is there any other way, which says, no, directly looking at the sun, how does this happen? I don't know, still, those are question marks for me, but just to try to put it into some context.
I mean, he's addressing the heart, right? And the notion that just as I can't see the sun, I can't see the truth as it is. I'm always sort of giving some sort of filter or color onto it. And I guess the inevitability of that. And I don't know if that inevitability is just for the flower, but at this stage, that makes a lot of sense for me, and I feel like, I could confirm that aspect of it. But I was also thinking what you were talking about in the very beginning about how understanding each of the yearnings of the flower, atom, or droplet, atom, confusing all them, but like that yearning as the fact that their needs are still nevertheless being met. And throughout all of this, I was just thinking that there's so many different ways within, all these different things, and we can draw out maps and whatever, but amongst all of that, I guess the central idea being that there's always a way for wherever degree or wherever you're at, there's always some sort of connection, some sort of link that is being offered to you. You're never isolated or left alone, regardless of it, and just, I guess, like the pure generosity of that. That even if you can't see the truth naked, you can nevertheless experience, your needs, that yearning to be satisfied in whichever way you need it to be.
I guess your comment about inevitability of mixing sounds like with your color or whatever the right phrase, but inevitability of that. We have all our different colors. It has to be that way. So these, I guess, understanding is perfectly now made it a little bit like perfect clearer what he's talking about here in this paragraph, and why maybe he was referring this as Ehl-i Fikir, path of intellectual thought. So when we look at world as I am a person, you are a person, I have my life, you have your life, I have my reality, you have your reality, I'm an agent, you are agent, all these things. When I look at the world with this mindset, I follow the petal flower. I say, look at me, I'm a person, and I have my own capacities, I have my own limits, I have my own colors. And I say that this is inevitable. So whatever we reach as truth, whatever we reach, whatever we understand as creator, as sustainer, it has to be specific to myself or yourself. When we say that, I guess we are following the petal flower. We look at our colors, and I see that my colors are different than your colors. Therefore, your truth is yours, my truth is mine. And this has to be inevitable, because we are only looking at our colors. Even if I reach a certain level of universality, saying that, yeah, but there must be a giver of the colors. The color as a concept is a universal thought. I make these abstractions and so on. But it's still, I'm still talking about the colors, nothing more. But the author says, if you stay there, if you only look at yourself, what you see around you, you will think that it's inevitable. You will get lost in these different colors. But if you raise your head and don't look at your colors, don't look at your differences, but instead look at the sun, again, needs to be studied, then you will see that it's not inevitable. If you, limit yourself as, this is what I am, this is the reality, I am different than yours. So it has to be, like, it's inevitably what we believe has to be different. You say so because you try to reach reality through your colors, nothing more. Then it has to be inevitable. But if you look at sun directly, all these differences will dissolve.
But that's the point. I can't look at the sun directly.
Author says you can. I don't know if that's a claim, like we should study. But I guess this is like our, going back what Yusuf was saying, that we are educated in a certain way. It's too hard for us. Get rid of the ideas of, he was saying materialism, some others say naturalism. In your case, whatever you want to call, subjectivity. It's really hard to get rid of it. It's really hard to get outside the box. Because this is what you are taught from the beginning. We have all different colors, thus inevitably whatever we reach has to be different. Author says, yes, this is true. If you are a flower, if you stay as a flower, and if you want to reach the reality, only looking at your colors.
And his alternative suggestion is when he says, look at the sun directly, he says, previously you were looking down at your roots because you were thinking that this is what defines me. Like the nutritions and things make me what I am, and from them I take the colors or take the shape of my petals, whatever, and then when the sunlight comes, then I see the sun through my petals. How did my petals form? Because of the nutritions that I take. So he doesn't, the flower in this case is very much restraining his self to something. Sun is just additionally bringing something to him. Independent of sun, he has some sort of values within himself which he receives through earth. So I guess applying it to us, it's going to be like, I exist, I am, and then I independently exist with all my limitations and everything. But then things manifest on me, reflect on me, and I start getting to know it through how it appears on me. So initially I am taking it for granted that I do exist. How do I exist? I am. This part in this metaphor, the flower is looking at the earth and saying he's worried about his existence and saying that my existence is coming from earth. And I guess in our case, when I say my limitations, I'm already accepting that there exists some entity as if independently, as of by myself, which has a shape and form. Where did I get this shape and form from? Was it an independent existence of its own, or the very existence that I am is also a manifestation? The flower is being asked to turn its head towards the sun, saying that this is where your sustenance is coming from. Why are you looking at the earth as if your sustenance is coming from there? Whatever, because we are saying that my understanding, my perception is limited. There is my perception coming from also. Where is I am from? So I think there are two things in here. One is flower is a screen. Something is manifesting or reflecting on the screen. So the screen itself is conscious. The screen itself exists. So I exist, my consciousness exists, and conscious images also exist in my perception. I sense something. In all these, I feel like I exist independently. The things that come to me, okay, they're coming from outside, but once they reflect on me, they again exist, but how do they exist? So all these, part of it I attributed to myself, part of it I attributed to sun. But by as if saying, look at the sun directly, the author is inviting me to reconsider, where does this my, or the notion of I, exist? Does it independently there, or even that one is a manifestation? This is how I guess I can look at the sun. Or am I going to say that no, I exist and independently, I never question this form of it, and my shapes and limitations exist independently? Then the sun is going to reflect on me, and then the rest is going to be the colors of sun. But myself, no, I'm an independent existence. But if I can say that, wait a second, where did I happen to exist? How does this I exist in the first place? And how does the perception or the consciousness is existing in here? These are also part of the sun's reflections. So once I start saying that, no, everything is from sun, then I guess now I am turning my face totally toward the sun. Otherwise, I will divide things between me and the sun. So this is who I am. These are my limitations. Beyond this, okay, I can now talk about colors of sun. It was, I guess, very abstract. So how I would put it into, I don't know if it will help anymore, any better. But I'm saying that I'm a merciful person. This is why when I see a mother and daughter, I do sense the reflection of this scene to me is, yeah, I decide this is mercy. But where is my mercifulness coming from? I define myself as merciful. And I say, this is why I see it as merciful. But where did this mercifulness coming from? Because I am very much worried and saying that this limitation itself exists by itself, inherently. I never question as if it belongs to me. But if I take one step further, and the same way I say that mother and daughter, mercy is a manifestation of sun, and even the sensing ability to sense mercy is a manifestation of the same sun. The ability to say I is also a manifestation of the same sun. Then now I am, rather than looking at ground and saying that this is where I am coming from, so no, you are coming from the sun also. There is no separate flower that is not being given existence by the sun. I mean, the source of flower is not earth. Did it help at all? No.
To me, yes.
Okay, whatever. I tried.
Okay, we are out of time. And since Azam, HB, Mohammed Said, Shema, Suhail not speaking, and I don't want to hear others like physically present here anymore, so I guess we can stop. We can continue with wise philosopher next week, inshallah.
So we know who is going to be the moderator then.
Oh yeah, it's definitely Atik. Right? Okay, let's conclude inshallah for today. Yusuf, would you like to conclude for us?
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.